So welcome everyone to They Said What? Black Disabled Women Discuss the Cultural Shift, that is my dog in the background, discuss the cultural shift in white dominated social justice spaces. Thanks so much for being here today. My name is Andrea Levant, and I'll share a little bit about myself in a bit. First, I'd like to give an image description for those that it would be helpful for. So I am in my office / living room area with a bunch of things behind office drawers and things behind me. I am wearing a floral print dress. I have on some green glasses, a necklace. My hair is kind of kinky curly going on today, and excited to be here with you. Again, my name is Andrea, and I have been a disability rights and disability justice activist for well over a decade, and currently am the president and founder of Levant Consulting Incorporated, which is a strategy and communications firm really focused on helping people really understand and speak disability. Right now, my most notable work to date is as an impact producer for Netflix's Crit Camp, which is executive produced by President Barack and Mrs. Michelle Obama. And my role there is really to leverage the message of the film for social change. And so excited today to have an incredible and phenomenal panel of disabled women who I'm pleased to know not only professionally, but personally. And so I would love for them to each introduce themselves and provide image descriptions as well. So let's start with Dr. Angel Miles.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Dr. Angel F. Miles. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a Black woman with brown skin, and I have short locks, and I have a blue blouse on with blue earrings and blue eyeshadow, and I actually have a blue clock behind me, so I guess I like blue a lot. I didn't realize. And some white background. And my wheelchair pillow is in the back, so I'm also a wheelchair user. And a little bit about me, I'm originally from Philly. I currently live in Chicago. What else? I have been a disability studies and rights policy scholar activist for many years. I'm a published author. I have and researcher. I have an article written in Gender and Society on Black women with disabilities, and to name one major publication. And I'm just happy and blessed to be here with so many phenomenal women with disabilities. And I forgot to mention, I think Andrea forgot to mention one of her most amazing accomplishments, which was being my roommate for almost 5 years. And you're welcome, Andrea. And now we live in different states and we're trying to make it. So yeah, it's been great.
Thank you.
Okay, I wasn't sure I was supposed to pick somebody else if that's what you
go for it, go for it.
So I'm gonna pick Allie.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allie Cannington. I use they, them, or she, her pronouns. My image description, I'm a white femme person with aviator glasses, black background wall, and a gray tank top. I have brown hair and some piercings on my nose and lip. I am calling in today from Oakland, California, and I'm so honored and humbled to be listening and supporting our conversation today. During the day, I work to accelerate and advocate for more accessible, affordable, and inclusive housing at an organization called the Kelsey. And then for 10 or more years now, I've been involved in the disability rights movement in a variety of different ways. And all of it, the thread has been, how do we hold folks like myself who often have privilege and power in our movement, hold us accountable for racial justice and anti-racism, and worked alongside now ancestor Kaite D. Davidson, and still here founder and leader T.L. Lewis of HEARD. We created the Praxis of Disability Solidarity, which happened in 2014 when Mike Brown was murdered by the police. And that was one of the things that we did to hold disability rights organizations accountable for racial justice. So if you look up the hashtag disability solidarity right now or after this, hopefully you can find ways of how we as disability rights advocates, activists are amazing, are holding our movements accountable for racial justice. I will pass it to Ola.
Thank you so much, Allie. My name is Ola Ojewumi. I am the founder and director of Project Ascend. We are a nonprofit college scholarship program that sends disabled youth to college. Oh, let me start with how I look. Okay, I have a long, wavy, black, curly hair. I'm wearing a red draped top, I should say, and I have on bold red lipstick. I'm a dark-skinned woman of Nigerian descent. I've been a disability justice and disability rights activist for years. I'm gonna be brief. I have my own disability pride apparel store called olastruth.com. If you wanna get some cute stuff and show off your disability and show how proud you are to be a disabled person, just come to our website, www.olastruth.com. In my past life, I have worked a lot in politics. I interned in the Obama administration, and I also served on the White House kitchen cabinet, African-American kitchen cabinet on disability. Most of my work surrounds education policy and improving access and accessibility to higher education for disabled youth. And in a nutshell, I'm me. That's it. Thank you. And I will pass it on to Reyma.
Thank you, Ola. My name's Reyma McCoy McDeid. My pronouns are she and her. And my image description is as follows. I am a middle-aged Black American lady. Proximate skin tone is the color of a Nilla wafer. And I'm wearing a black t-shirt that says, "Shut up, Sharon." And there's a cat on it. And I'm wearing rainbow glasses. And so I'm long in the tooth, but I'm all about the whimsical. And I'm sitting in my bedroom and I've got a bookshelf behind me and lots of white light and all that good stuff. I am probably, as far as this panel is concerned, the newest to disability advocacy work. I've only been in this space for less than 5 years. I'm the executive director of Central Iowa Center for Independent Living, which is located in Des Moines, Iowa. Yes, there are Black folks in Iowa. I'm pleased to announce that I got my internet back this morning. For those of you who don't know, we experienced a very major natural disaster that impacted the entire state of Iowa on Monday. And so we've been digging ourselves out. Nearly 250,000 folks still are without power. So it's not really being reported nationally, but Iowa is struggling right now. So just putting that out there. I'm also the Anti-Racism and Equity Task Force co-chair for the National Council on Independent Living, as well as Nichols treasurer. And then I do various other things in the disability community. The thing that I do that's nearest and dearest to my heart is facilitate conversations about race and equity in disability spaces. And I experience a fair amount of pushback for that work, but the work needs to be done. And I acknowledge that even though I am a Black woman, because of my light skin privilege, I have the responsibility to do this kind of work. And honored to be here in this space with these wonderful women this morning, and looking forward to having some excellent conversation. And am I the last one? I think I am. So I will hand it back to Andrea.
Oh, this is about to be fire today. Yes, Black people live in Iowa. I was born there. So, hey, Des Moines in the house. So all of us are here today because we represent multiply marginalized experiences that impact our lives and our work in social justice spaces. And in particular, those of us as Black disabled women, and Allie, who is an incredible ally to us, we know firsthand what it's like to experience and witness racism within what's supposed to be a space that is for us, and that's disability-specific spaces. Interestingly, the murder of George Floyd and others, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and the list goes on, not only brought racism to the forefront of the general public, but particularly to social justice-based environments, including disability-focused organizations. Yet we know that while outwardly we are seeing people within our movement publicize statements committing to anti-racism, experience proves that the structural and systemic oppression that we've experienced is still present, but is likely more veiled. And so today, don't you love pets being around? There's a Reyma right there. It just is what it is in this world, right? So today I just want to dive in. I am going to direct a question toward each of you, recognizing as my sisters that we all can talk about these for time on end. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna direct each question to you, and then in hopes that we can leave some time for questions from participants in a bit. So the first question I have is for you, Angel. How has it been to work in a sector that until very recently was seemingly reticent to acknowledge both the existence of systemic racism within the movement and ambivalent with regard to statements such as Black Lives Matter?
All right, let's get right into it then. I would say it's been bittersweet, and you know, in some ways it's a relief, but in a lot of ways it's been really, really stressful. And I say stressful because on one hand, an issue that, you know, Black people with disabilities and other people of color disabilities have been saying for a long time, you know, suddenly those same organizations and colleagues are putting out statements, and it kind of messes with your head a little bit, you know, like what's going on. It's kind of a gaslighting experience. Like, is this the same place that I experienced, you know, oppression, or I experienced being silent about the same issue? Is now saying Black Lives Matter, is now talking about anti-racism and using this language that, you know, was so hard to hear before from the same community. So, you know, in that way, it's bittersweet because you're happy to see it, but it's also frustrating that it took a Black man being killed, you know, on national TV it really just should not take, you know, a Black woman being killed while she's asleep in her home, Breonna Taylor, or George Floyd being, you know, killed on TV, and so many others, for, you know, white dominant disability rights organizations to notice our pain. And so the first thing I would say is that we need to, as a disability community, that is white-led in terms of the organizations and institutions, they need to really do some self-reflection and think about what is it that took them so long to acknowledge this reality and speak up, because realizing that now will help them grow and to become a better organization, instead of like patting themselves on the back for saying something in the first place, which is actually what they should do. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. You know, when there's oppression and injustice, that's what you should do. That's what we expect able-bodied people to do, or non-disabled people to do. So, and I would also say that, you know, in my particular organization, I work for Access Living, which is a Center for Independent Living. And I am proud to say that my organization is really at the forefront of Centers for Independent Living for doing racial justice work. So we were doing it long before it was popular and long before the Black Lives Matter tag. We have a racial justice organizer, Candace Coleman, who is amazing. We have a Latinx and immigration disability justice organizer, who, you know, recently led a Ford-funded immigration and disability conference. And so we have been doing this work, but we are the exception. And even though Access Living is doing a lot, we acknowledge that they have not, even they're not doing enough, because even though Access Living primarily serves people of color, has a large amount of staff that are people of color, it's still a white-led organization. And so all the directors are white, and the CEO is white. And so, you know, power is still distributed in a way that is problematic. And I think that we've made that clear, those of us who are people of color in the organization, and those of us who are people of color that are served by the organization. And I feel that they have heard that. And so I am proud to work for an organization that is both doing the work and doing the self-reflection. And so one of the things that they're doing is they're going to do like a staff survey to find out, you know, like what it is that are some of the racial barriers within our own culture at the SIL that they can improve on. And we also have, you know, formed a board, a staff committee to help develop next steps for our organization, because racial equity was a part of our strategic plan long before. So Access Living is doing the work, but as I would also say that even by doing all those great things and hiring me and other people of color, that can't compensate for being white-led. And so that really does need to change. And I think that they know that. And I think that other disability rights organizations really need to know that too, because, and I think the rest of you will maybe agree or understand, is that those of us who are people of color and disabled or otherwise marginalized, the irony is that during this crisis, we are being overworked. We are actually doing more work, you know, because there's so few of us, and then we are also not in positions of power. Like, we're also not getting the pay, like, in the same way. So we're advising people with power, but we don't have the decision making. And so that really needs to change. You know, I won't say more, but that needs to change. So I'm grateful for the work that disability rights organizations and other disability-led organizations have done in terms of making a statement. But now they have to really put their money where their mouth is and really use their privilege to empower other people. And I'll just say this last thing. A lot of you know, white, well-meaning people, you know, they want to know what they can do. And I would say, in some ways, what you need to do is nothing. Like what you need to do is just listen and actually move out the way, like, and actually put people of color in some of those positions. And that's what I don't see people doing. It's like, what should we do? Actually, you need to stop doing. You need to stop being in that position for 30 years and give somebody else that position. That's what you need to do. You need to sit down and let somebody else be heard. So, and I'm one of the most highly educated, people in most disability rights spaces, and yet I still am not in a position of power most of the time. And so, it's like, what is it that we have to do? And so anyway, I could go on, and I don't want to take up any more time, but that's some of my thoughts on that topic.
Knew it would be fire. Thank you very much. I'm not going to say anything else. I'm going to go on to Reyma. The 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act was the end of last month. And yet we know that in commemorating that there are stories that haven't been told. And there are people. Actually, right now, I believe there's a memorial service going on for one of the pillars in our community. And it's been really disheartening to me that I've had to tell people who this person was. And it's been really shocking. So I would love for you to share some of the historic key players in disability rights that have been overlooked because of race, ethnicity, and or even, we hear about and understand this concept of hierarchy of disability and, and all of that. So even perhaps kind of going over what that means. What are the stories? Who are the stories that haven't been told?
Thank you, Andrea. Andrea, you're so right. As you mentioned, right as we speak, there's a memorial service being held for Deidre Davis Butler, who I know for a fact impacted the lives of everybody that's on this panel right now in wonderful ways. And so just some background for people who are listening along and might not be familiar with who Miss Deidre Davis Butler was. She was just a powerhouse as far as the disability rights movement is concerned. Highly educated, I believe she was a lawyer, and did amazing things for the community at the federal level with regards to the work that she did with the federal government, and in disability rights spaces. So independent living movement in particular. She was a real groundbreaker as far as doing a lot of labor that put her in a position of way shower for the independent living movement, disability rights movement. She's one of the people that was the sort of parent behind the idea of creating a diversity committee for the National Council on Independent Living. Prior to that, the creation of that committee, there was absolutely no presence of Black, Indigenous, people of color in decision-making roles in independent living. And that's especially egregious because the disability rights movement / independent living movement has always been very open and upfront about the fact that it was inspired by the Black civil rights movement. And so the infrastructure of the independent living / disability rights movement was borrowed from the Black civil rights movement. And as soon as it got off the ground, it very systematically left us out, with the exception of those of us who fed members of the independent living movement. I know that a fair amount of attention has been brought to the fact that Black Panthers in the late 60s and 70s literally fed participants in the independent living movement. And so outside of sort of subservient roles to the independent living movement, there's been a notable absence of Black and other people of color, especially with regards to decision-making roles. Deidre was the paradigm shifter as far as that is concerned. And here it is 2020, and if you look at the National Council on Independent Living's Board of Directors, there's a fair amount of diversity now. That would not have happened without the labor of Deidre Davis Butler. And so I appreciate that she's getting some attention now, and people are saying, well, who is this woman? But you know, I am frustrated, not only that not everybody in the disability rights movement knows who this woman was, until the relatively recent history, the ancestors of our movement, when they passed away, there wasn't any attention brought to them whatsoever. And so we're moving forward somewhat, and so we've reached a point now where at least we're getting attention when we pass away. I would like for us to reach a point where we're getting attention as we are doing the work. And so for those of you who are not familiar with disability rights, disability justice work, the women that are on this panel now are doing that work now. You know, we've got Dr. Angel Miles, who's like she said, if she's not one of the most educated people in the disability rights movement, she is the most educated person in the disability rights movement. You know, writes wonderfully informative articles about the intersections of disability and race and gender. You know, seek her out now. Give attention to the work that she does now. Ola, Miss Wheelchair Maryland, currently has been doing this work since she was a child, I think. And Andrea has been doing this work, and definitely deserves recognition in the here and now as well. If you're not familiar with the Crip Camp film and the conversations that it has spurred in the past year, seek her out, seek out Crip Camp, and follow that work now. You know, Imani Barberin is another person that is doing the work now, and offers lots of thought-provoking tweets about the intersection of race and disability. You know, let's do what we can to ensure that we are honoring the people as they are doing the work today, and not scrambling to figure out who they were when they pass away. That is something that needs to end now. And you know, as Dr. Miles pointed out, we've got organizations, social justice organizations that have issued just an influx of statements in the past 8 weeks. You know, and that's great, that's wonderful, but inevitably and invariably, the pendulum is swinging in the other direction, and people are settling back into the status quo. Those statements are gathering dust. One great way that we can ensure that those statements are alive, and have force behind them, is by giving attention to the people that are doing the work now, and checking in with organizations that have issued statements and asking them specific questions about what's your plan to ensure that this statement has life to it, and doesn't just get lost in the shuffle of things. And yeah, there's a lot going on right now, as far as pandemic and natural disasters, if you're on the West Coast or Iowa or in the hurricane impacted areas. But this is something that needs to continue to have focus on it, especially in so-called social justice, progressive type spaces. So even if you're not working in disability spaces, if you're working in, reproductive justice or environmental justice, whatever, invariably your organization has put out a statement. Check in with your organization. I know I'm off on a tangent, but this is important. Check in with your organization. Ask them, hey, what's the plan to ensure that this statement has more substance to it than just words on paper? Like Dr. Miles pointed out, her organization is taking those next steps. What is your organization doing to take those next steps? Because that will provide a framework or an infrastructure to ensure that the Black, Indigenous, other people of color in your respective movements aren't also forgotten until they unfortunately pass away and people scramble to figure out what their efforts were to ensure that your movement has sustainability to it.
Thank you so much. It's so true. I think about, like Anita Cameron, who is a pillar in our movement, a Black person who talks about how, she's one of very few left from those that have been that were in history and I would love to say in the history books, but unfortunately are not. And so in addition to having us now, it's just so important to ask the questions and get time with those people and listen to those people so that we know how to move forward based on their experiences as well. So Ola, my next question is for you. What are the biggest barriers to transforming social justice spaces, such as the disability rights sector, such that they do become intersectional in their focus?
The biggest challenge is overcoming people's discomfort with the truth. And the truth is, it makes you uncomfortable. And hearing a Black disability justice advocate or a person of color, BIPOC, say, hey, your organization is racist. Here's how you can change it. That is an uncomfortable conversation a lot of people and organizations are unwilling to have. And my clothing line is called The Truth because it's about the truth of disability pride and being honest with yourself that you are disabled. But when you peel back that layer, disabled doesn't mean exempt from racist. And for some strange reason, within our community, one thinks disability is akin to race and that it's equal with being Black. And they will willingly say it to you. Well, I'm disabled, so I know what it's like to be Black. No, the hell you don't, because you can still roll into a Klan meeting and be okay. It's the truth. That is the great equalizer, is that if you know you can be perfectly fine and safe in white supremacist circles, you do not know what racism is like. You do not know what it feels like. And ableism is not akin to racism because Black, BIPOC, Black disabled people of color and Indigenous people exist who experience that duality, both. There's a reason why I don't work in the disabled rights community, because I can't function within spaces where people are praising themselves for all the great work they're doing, but in the same breath, still being racist, still excluding disabled people of color from opportunities, and only bringing them out to showcase them as tokens. I'm not with the tokenization. It's very difficult for me. I do my work in my own space. Like Andrea, you have your LLC. I do things on an advisory level, so I don't have to work directly with problematic white-led disability organizations if I don't have to. I think that's pretty much it. I think to say there needs to be a moratorium on thinking that because you're working for disability rights or your organization has a mission for disability rights that you cannot check the racism within that within that structure. I think if we really want to see transformative change, that comes with removing white disabled people from positions of power in all these organizations. Because just because you have a disabled person as the head of the organization does not mean they don't carry their own white privilege and their own internal biases that they bring with them. And a lot of this, and even going down to a classism structure, you're choosing middle class and upper middle class people to run these organizations. You're not choosing BIPOCs who've experienced poverty, who experience what it's like to be low income. Because when you bring that into an organization and that into leadership, it changes how the organization is led. So with that being said, there are many facets of disability, and the intersection of race and disability and class need to be examined as well, because I'm, for one, am tired of seeing wealthy, white, Harvard-educated disabled people running organizations when they haven't had to have the same struggles as the average person of color with a disability.
I'm just gonna keep being quiet and moderate this session. So Allie, tell us, what actions should those who are new to conversations regarding the importance of anti-racism work within disability or any social justice space undertake to ensure that those discussions are not, they're more than trendy, that they're actually effective?
Yeah, it's definitely not just a statement in any way, shape, or form. I'm just going to share some brief reflections, and then we can move into some Q&A. So this process of unlearning white supremacy and racism and practicing anti-racism is a never-ending journey. There is not a start, there's not an end point. There's not, and also that it cannot be siloed to professional. It has to be throughout our entire white people, our lives, personal, professional, and everything in between. A part of white supremacy culture and ableism is perfectionism, and needing to do things fast-paced and to produce something all the time. Within organizations and personally, we need to slow down, slow our processes, and think about who is and isn't at the table, who is and isn't getting a promotion, what are the numbers, what are the organizations that we are hiring on or buying food from for our events? Are they Black-owned businesses? Taking the time to do that additional research and starting to really and build relationships with Black-led organizations, Black, Indigenous, people of color-led groups, not to get something out of it, but because relationship building and trust building is the only way that we as white people can understand where our role is in this. We need to know that there will be, if one gauge to know if you are doing the work of unlearning and relearning is how uncomfortable you are, as I think Ola said. If you are not uncomfortable, I can't even tell you how often I am so uncomfortable. And that's a part of what it means to be a white person in this world, period, regardless of the other oppressions that you have. I also, as white people, whether or not if you have class privilege or know people with class privilege, and as white people in general, think about our role in reparations and redistribution. I want to elevate an organization that I'm learning a lot from with it, which is resource generation. And how am I redistributing power and actual money to Black, disabled people, Black Indigenous people of color? And how can I talk to other white disabled people about this? I'm also learning about what it means to have those conversations with other white people. There is no excuse to not find resources about what it means to engage in this work. And I just want to offer right now, like, if you're struggling as a white person knowing your role, let's have a conversation. There's so much emotional, intellectual, physical labor that Black, Indigenous people of color continue to have to do. And if we have an opportunity to have some of those conversations amongst ourselves while still being guided and constantly listening to Black, Indigenous people of color, we need to do that work in our own spaces and not put that on Black, Indigenous people of color. I also just want to say that I can't even tell you how many times I've been in spaces where Black folks, Black, Indigenous people of color have shared vulnerably and at risk how they've experienced racism, and white people will question it on the spot and talk about themselves either comparing their own oppression or discounting it altogether. That is a no. Just like, we can't do that. We cannot do that. We listen, we take in, and then we respond and act accordingly. And so if you're finding yourself, and I'm really learning in this journey, like I am not in the place of shaming other white people, but I am in the place of holding us accountable. So if you notice yourself doing that, we're gonna mess up. We are going to mess up time and time again. And that is a part of unlearning white supremacy, because we will not be perfect. And I want to elevate disability justice principles that you can learn from Sins Invalid. And I want to also elevate a few other resources that I'll put in the chat. There's still more to be said, but I'll stop there. And thank you.
Why, thank you. Thank you all. So we doesn't look like we have any questions in the Q&A box. But we just have about 5 minutes anyway. So I think what I would love to do is kind of, there's 5 of you, or so let's just do a round robin real quick, put you on the spot. What's the one thing that you want to leave with folks today that are with us? The one mic drop real quick. I mean, you already did it for sure. Yeah. Ola's the Klan reading. Yeah, I'm on that. There you go. I will tag you and all of the things. That one is, yeah. So anyway, anything else quick that you want to say, Ola? Just a quick 60-second, whatever. With folks.
Okay, I spent many of years like ashamed and in the closet about my disability. I'm a part-time wheelchair user, so sometimes my disability is visible, other times it's not. I spent years in the closet, ashamed. And when I say in the closet, like for some people with hidden disabilities, there is a coming out process. If you ever had disability accommodations in school, you're probably disabled. And I used to be like, I'm not disabled, I just get accommodations. And then I grew up, and then I learned that there's nothing wrong with being disabled. So that's the one thing I would like to leave with participants here. If you've ever straddled the fence about being disabled, don't feel bad, because there are people in wheelchairs, there are wheelchair users who still don't consider themselves disabled. whatever negative schema you have about disability, just remember it's just like, it's not just like any other identity, but disability pride is a major thing for me. Try to find something to be proud of when it comes to your disability. As you can see, I had a heart transplant and kidney transplant. So I have a weak heart. I can't really walk that far. I'm proud of these scars. I'm proud that it's been 18 years since my surgeries and I'm still here. That's unheard of. Some people don't even live past year 5 with their transplants, and I'm living to year 18. Just let go of the shame and welcome in the pride, because there's a whole movement and group of people waiting for you to envelope you in love and show you that there's nothing wrong with being disabled.
Thank you so much. And we did, so as I'm going around, so I'll go to you, Angel, Dr. Miles, whatever, I earned my angel. So Jennifer, who seems to be a fan of us, and I'm so grateful, she wants to know, what brings you joy? How do you keep going? So in addition to whatever you want to mic drop, what brings you joy?
Well, one thing that brings me joy is disability community. It brings me a lot of joy. You know, I really, there's a feminist scholar named Chandra Mahanti, and I was lucky to be mentored by her in a program I was in. And I remember she told me once, you know, when I was complaining about disability or not of disabled people in academia and blah, blah, blah. And she said, you know, like in the 70s when we were building, intersectionality and third world feminisms and all this, like there weren't, like these things didn't exist. And so she said, you know, we created the communities that we wanted to see. And so if it's not there, then create it. And so that's what I tried to do. And so when I moved to DC area, I sought out women of color that were disabled, people of color that were disabled. And, you know, I sought out Ola, and much to her dismay, I sought her out. I sought out Andrea also, much to her dismay. I'm like, we're gonna be friends. And she resisted it really hard. And I'm like, we're gonna live together. And she's like, nope. And I have to say that, if it wasn't for Miss Davis Butler, you know, I wouldn't have been able to live with Andrea. She made that even possible. And so also just being mentored by other disabled women of color has also given me a lot of joy and has sustained me. And so if you don't see it, even though we don't get any really recognition or attention, we're not really in, you know, the Crip camp, you know, there's not a large amount of women of color in Crip camp, and I would say there's even some problematic statements about race in the film, but and even though I feel very empowered by it, just look to seek out people of color with disabilities or other marginalized people with disabilities and build community, and that's what really brings me joy, and that's what sustains me. And also allies like Allie too. It really sustains me too.
Angel's my mentor. She's like the bomb.com. She doesn't want to admit it, but she's everything. She's everything to me. I love you, sis.
I love you too. Oh, I love you all.
Thanks. So Allie, I'm gonna go to you, and then we're gonna let it end with Reyma. So go for it. Whatever you want to say, real quick.
Listen and act.
Thank you. And Reyma, leave us with it.
I see that it's 11:50.
Yes.
So I'm gonna keep it very simple. This conversation that we're having, the subject matter behind this conversation, I often hear white people talk about it from the context of, should we entertain this conversation? I just don't know. This conversation's mandatory. The only thing that there's flexibility about is when the conversation is entertained. And so if you purport yourself to be a progressive, no matter what kind of space you work in, you want to have this conversation now. You don't want history to remember you as just being another person that kicked the can down the road so that the next generation could take care of the shit that you didn't take care of when you had the opportunity to do so. Stop it. Time to have the conversations now. And this message is for all 7 of the white women who have filed grievances against me in the past year because I've been entertaining this conversation.
Bloop. All right, we are at time, and just want to say thanks to everyone that joined us today. Just continue to follow, listen, follow our work, listen, open your ears, and all of the things that they said. We're so grateful, and look forward to what's next. Thanks, you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea.
Guys,
Bye.
this was fun.